Hey everyone, welcome to ReBloom, the podcast where we explore the power of change, rediscovery, and living with intention.
That's right. We're your hosts, Lori and Jamie, two friends who really love a good story about transformation.
In each podcast, we're going to chat with inspiring guests who've made bold pivots in their lives or careers. They've let go of what no longer served them to embrace something more authentic, joyful, and true to who they really are.
And the best part, many of them reconnect with passions or dreams they discovered as kids. It's about finding the seeds planted long ago and letting them bloom again.
So if you're ready for real conversations about reinvention, purpose, and following your creative heart, you're in the right place.
Let's dive in and see what it takes to rebloom.
Lori, this connection came to me through a dear friend, and I am so excited for our listeners to meet Navah Frost. She is the most incredible person, baker, musician. She wears so many hats, but she is just a delight, and what a great conversation.
I was fascinated by the fact that she had not one, but now a second beautiful creative career.
Beautiful creative career. Yeah.
And they're different, but they're in some ways the same. And I loved hearing her talk about that.
Yeah. So for anyone who is headed down one career path, whether it be creative or different, and wants to have that beautiful pivot, you definitely want to hear Nava tell her story. Thanks, everyone, and bloom big. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of ReBloom. I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Hi, Lori. How are you today?
Hey, Jame. I'm good. You did good on securing this interview.
Oh,
good job.
This is a friend reached out and told me about this our incredible guest, and I cannot wait to welcome her on and interview her and get to know her a little bit more. And it's just the power sometimes of direct messaging and Instagram. And here we are today.
Yeah, reaching out, and who knows? You never know.
Who knows where you're going to be? Well, today we have the pleasure of speaking with the incredibly talented Navah Perlman Frost. She is a world-renowned concert pianist, but she has had a major pivot and a rebloom. And she is now creating gorgeous floral cakes. I mean, if anybody wants to buy me a birthday cake, this is where you need to go. I'm telling you, these are the most beautiful, beautiful cakes. So she's transitioned, as many of us did after the pandemic, from her life as a musician, and now she is a baker, and she has an incredible business in New York City, and we are so excited to speak with her and welcome Nava. How are you today?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing great. I'm so glad that you asked me to do this.
Oh, well, you are our perfect guest because as we were telling you, and we like to share, we love to talk to people who've had a career and then had a very distinct pivot. Now, often we find that our guests pivot from something that's maybe more business related and go to something more creative because their creative heart had been speaking to them. But you really had a very large creative life prior to this.
Yes, I pivoted from one creative outlet to another. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of differences between being a musician and being a baker / cake decorator, but they're definitely within that same creative realm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, not to go too far back, but you were a concert pianist. How did that, did you do that as a child? Like what brought you to piano?
Yeah, so I always loved music growing up. I come from a musical family. My father is a musician, a professional musician. My mother was trained as a professional musician. Actually, that's how they met. They met at music camp. And
I love that.
Yeah, and they both went to Juilliard and studied with the same violin teacher, and they ended up getting married quite young. And the minute they got married, my mother stopped playing to become a mom, and travel around with my dad. And when I was born, I'm not sure that, I have an older brother, and then there's me, and I have 3 younger siblings. And I don't think there was ever an expectation that all of us would become professional musicians. But it certainly wasn't hard to slip into a musical routine, given the environment in which I grew up. And my piano playing sort of became a very central part of my life, starting when I was like in, I don't know, it's like kindergarten, I would say.
Wow.
And I had a very sort of rigorous training upbringing. And I wouldn't say it was all bad, but it definitely wasn't normal.
Yeah.
It wasn't your average situation. I compare it more to like the sports kids, and some of the child acting situations where, let's just say, I didn't quite have enough agency to know what was going on. But I did love playing. I still love music. And as I sort of progressed into my teenage years, I started performing professionally.
Okay.
And if what happened back then were happening now, I would be labeled immediately as a Nepo baby. I don't know if you've heard that term.
Yes.
The nepotism. And I'm going to admit full on that my career started very young, definitely because of my family connections. That said, it did last a very long time. And I have always been a believer that, and I think this is true of any profession, like if you have parents in a specific business and you fall into that business, there's only so long that people will keep hiring you if you don't actually have the goods to produce something that's marketable and that audiences want.
Correct.
So I think that for a long time, I maybe questioned, well, am I just getting these dates because of my family connections, or am I really good enough? And I think that by the time I was 50, I think I figured out that, I was probably decent enough to be doing what I had been doing.
I bet you were.
So that was sort of the chapter of my life that was extremely fulfilling, extremely rewarding. And I think that I didn't even realize that I was ready for a shift until COVID. And I think that it's one of those things when you've been doing something for so long, it would sort of be as if someone told you all of a sudden you're not allowed to brush your teeth every day.
Yeah.
And you would say, oh, okay, well, that won't be that hard. I just won't brush my teeth every day. And then after like 2 days, you'd be like, wait, I have to brush my teeth. This is part of who I am.
Yeah.
And I think that I thought that would be me with concerts, that, COVID happened, the concerts were canceled, that I would, after a week, I'd be going stir crazy. And I'd be like, wait, I have to play a concert. I got to get out there. My Beethoven is calling me or whatever. But that's not what happened. What happened was I needed to bake a cake, and I needed to bake cupcakes, and I needed to bake cookies. And all of a sudden it was like, okay, wait, I guess I need a little break. Okay, fine. We'll call it a timeout, and I'll start practicing and getting myself ready. Who knows when the pandemic's going to end, but my chops are going to be so ready for that day. The minute they say go, I'm going to be like, straight out of the gate. It is totally not what happened.
Yeah.
So why baking? Where did that come from? Was there something that was there all along?
Yes. So I was always a hobby baker, like my teens into my 20s, into my young adulthood. Like baking was definitely always an outlet for me. I loved, I'm a really big cook as well. Like I cook regular food too. My parents are both really, really, really good cooks and really into food. I've always loved, whenever I travel, one of my big things is going to the supermarket, like no matter where I am. If it's in a place I've never been, it could be in the United States, it could be in a foreign country, I need to go to the supermarket and check it out. And it's just, that's how I am. So food was always very central in my mind as like a big like passion of mine and a hobby of mine. And in fact, when I was first married, one friend of my mom's gave me as like a bridal shower present, like a stack of cookbooks. And one of them was The Cake Bible by Rose Levy Berenbaum. She's sort of like one of the grand dames of baking. And I had baked a little bit then, for sure, at that point. I lived in a house in college for a couple years with my own kitchen, and I had sort of started baking a bit, and I had baked a little bit in high school, just brownies for the bake sale or whatever. But I got my hands on that Cake Bible, and I kept it on my bedside table on my nightstand, and I would read it like a novel. Like I didn't just take it to the kitchen and use it when I was baking. I read it at night before I went to bed, which is actually a habit I got into with all of my cookbooks. But with the baking one, I was very drawn to it. And so in my young adult life, one of the things that I would do when I would come home from playing a concert elsewhere or being on a tour is I would come home and bake. Like I just loved cookies or brownies or muffins or cakes, whatever. And it was just a way for me to unwind. And I've always been an entertainer of family and friends. And that continued when we had children. Always loved having, when my kids would have friends over to bake cookies together or have them ready as a snack. So it's always something I used to do sort of in between work events. And work obligations.
It's such a love language and the baking but do you find too that the precision of what you were doing as a musician, like I think bakers are very precise people. I have way ADD. I'm a better cook than I am a baker. I feel like recipes are just an outline. My husband's like, no, you're supposed to follow them. He's the precision guy.
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, as a cook, I'm incredibly undisciplined. Like I cannot follow a recipe without tweaking it. I look at it and I'm like, okay, that'll be good. But then when I get around to doing it, it's really just there for like a jumping off point for me. Right. And then I just go on my own rogue path. Yes. But with baking, you're absolutely right. And in fact, one of the things that I realized, I mean, this is how undisciplined I am, is that when I first started realizing that I was going to be selling my cakes, specifically the cakes in the beginning and the cupcakes, I realized that over the years, I never really kept track of which cakes I made that I had done anything to. Like, had I actually, have I left this recipe alone or have I added something to it? I never write anything down. I never did anything like even a file where it's like, okay, of all the layer cakes I've ever made that are chocolate, this one is the best one. So I had to backtrack, try and remember, okay, which were some of the cakes that I liked, and kind of recipe test starting from scratch, because I realized that if customer A ordered a chocolate cake and then 6 months later ordered it again, it better be the same thing. Yeah. And I wasn't used to having to be consistent like that. So if you order a specific item from a restaurant or a bakery or any place where they're churning it out, and you're expecting that whatever it is, blueberry muffin, to be so good the way it was the last time you had it, if it isn't the same recipe, what are you doing? You can't do that. Right. So it reined me in to what you're suggesting about being scientific, making sure I'm doing exactly the same thing that I do every single time for this specific item, and not like deciding to be a maverick and go crazy and add or subtract anything. But you're also right in the fact that in general, baking is more precision and repetition, which is true about music as well to a certain degree. Like you're definitely, in a sense, the cooking analogy is also applicable, because let's say you're playing, I don't know, a Mozart concerto. Well, it's the same basic recipe every time. The notes are the same. The tempos are going to be similar. The rhythms are all going to be hopefully intact. But when you get on stage, on a Tuesday, it may be slightly different than when you get on stage that following Saturday after you've played it like, 4 times in between. So maybe the dynamics will be a little shaded differently. Maybe you'll take a tiny smidge more of a ritardando here, but you'll do a little accelerando there that you didn't do before. Like it's like the base formula of the recipe, but maybe a tiny bit more salt and a little bit less acid or a tiny bit more sugar. You know what I mean? It's sort of, you get a little bit of that creative interpretive license with the actual sort of presentation. And that's much less possible with cake, cupcakes, cookies, more possible with bread, because of humidity and hydration and so it's like you could go crazy with these analogies.
So I'm curious about, since you grew up in a highly musical family and you've made this pivot, how has your family reacted to that?
So they're all extremely supportive. I mean, I can't even tell you, it's just so cute. I really do feel like everybody has been not just accepting of it, but just sort of like really rooting me on. And I mean, the truth is that when I first started realizing that I was jealous of all these bakers on Instagram, I was like, that's kind of how it started too, is how I realized that something was up with me. It wasn't just that I wasn't like gravitating towards the piano to get extra practice done during the pandemic. It was also that I would go on Instagram and I'd look at this woman decorating a cupcake and I'd be like envious. Like, why am I envious of that? That's just like a frosting flower. Like it's a rose made out of buttercream. Like, why am I feeling like I'm being left behind right now? Yeah. And so that sort of started it. But my kids were really supportive. And in fact, when I just remember so vividly, we were sitting around, me and my husband and a few of my kids. And one of my kids said, "You need a name for your business, Mom." And I was like, "I don't have a business." And they were like, "Yes, you do. Yeah. You just don't know it." And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing.
You have the perfect name. This is
this is the funny part. We sat around. Once I sort of had accepted it, maybe a few days after the initial conversation, I was like, all right, so what do I do? And my son was like, you need an Instagram that's just for your baking. Yes. And we're going to have to figure out how to take really great photos of everything. Because I'm not
sure. I love this. Yes. You have your own marketing team.
Is this all during the pandemic? Is this all happening during the pandemic?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So
this
that's
is in 2020.
Take us to the pandemic 5 years ago. Yes. Go ahead.
So it didn't take me too long to feel this raging amount of jealousy. And so I would say by the time we got to the sort of mid to late August of 2020, I was already just sort of, my eyes were just bugging out when I was watching some of these cake artists and looking at the reels and the videos online of some of these incredibly beautiful, intricate flowers and plants and botanicals, and how realistic some of them look, like a bouquet of flowers, and then realizing, wait, I'm not looking at real flowers right now. And that was sort of the start. And then I ended up sort of going down a rabbit hole with this one woman. Her name is Jane Taylor, and she is from the UK. And if you go to her website, her Instagram is just stunningly beautiful. But if you then go to the website, she offers little tutorials, and they could be like for one flower. So like if you didn't know how to pipe a rose, but you just wanted to learn that one flower, she offers it for purchase for very little. And you just click some buttons and all of a sudden there she is on the screen teaching you how to do it. And you have it forever, this video, this tutorial. Yeah. So I was like, okay, wait, you know what? That's not a huge investment. I'm going to try. And by the time we get to like late August, September of 2020, I had created my first cupcake bouquet, and we were sort of potting with one of my siblings who lives nearby, and my sister-in-law, she came over, and I mean, this is still pre-vaccination, and so we weren't really hanging out with that many people, but she came over and I showed her this cupcake bouquet, and she was like, "You have to sell that. That's insane. That's stunning." And I was like, okay, I don't even know how to respond to this. But yeah, so it was already brewing almost like, so we were shut down March 2020. So by August, September 2020, I was already sort of kind of getting myself organized and ready to go, practicing the peonies, the roses, the dahlias, the succulents, like all these different flowers that I also am just a very visual, like I've always been a very visual person. Like I was the arts and crafts kid growing up, always loved painting, loved drawing, loved everything visual. I was an art history major in college. Like I've always loved anything beautiful, like to see, to listen to. So at that point, my son and one of my daughters, we were like going through, oh, what should the name of this bakery be? This micro bakery that you're going to do out of your home. And we went through all these names, and my son kept typing them in, and he'd be like, nope, that's taken. Nope, that's taken. Nope, that's taken. Everyone has your name, this name, that name. Because I was thinking of regular generic bakery names. Then my daughter, one of our daughters said, wait, are we dumb? Yeah. What are we doing? It's Frosted by Nava.
Yeah.
Like how obvious could this be? Like why are we wringing our hands and trying to find something when it's right smack in front of our noses?
It's so
perfect.
It's
perfect
so
name. So that was the way that we got to that name. I think I have to thank my kids for that. But and then the next step was really sort of also a winging it sort of thing, which is I didn't really have any customers, and I needed to be able to show like via social media that like what I was doing.
Right.
So I have a friend who is actually not a photographer, but he's a really good hobby photographer. And I called him and I was like, if we stand 6 feet apart and wear masks, would you come over here? And I'm going to I'll bake a ton of stuff. I'll have you photograph it. And we're just going to pretend like I'll very slowly post over a period of time, and it'll look like I'm baking for a specific person. But actually it's just going to be your stock. I'll just stash, a bunch of photos and
fake it till you make it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what I found out at that moment, so this is September of 2020, is the power of social media and the power of photography.
Yes.
It's really something.
Let's take a quick minute and thank our amazing sponsors. Our podcast is proudly brought to you today by Jet Creative and Urban Stems. Jet Creative is a women-owned marketing firm committed to community and empowerment since 2013. Are you ready to rebloom and build a website or start a podcast? Visit jetcreative.com/podcast to kickstart your journey. They will help you bloom in ways you never imagined. And bonus, our listeners get an exclusive discount when you mention ReBloom. And a huge thanks to Urban Stems, your go-to and our go-to source for fresh, gorgeous bouquets and gifts delivered coast to coast. Use Bloom Big 20 and save 20% on your next order. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at ReBloom Podcast. Thanks to our sponsors, and thanks to you for joining us today. Well, and I teach social media to artists and florists, and it just, if you have beautiful content, it just because that's what people want to see. And particularly during 2020, and even now, we were all on our social media looking at what was out there, looking what was going to inspire us, and putting together your beautiful cupcakes and cakes. Absolutely gorgeous. So of course it's going to stop people in their tracks. And
so did the customers start coming pretty quickly?
It was really amazing. I had, of course, in the beginning, it was just kind of friends and family. And I really have there are a handful of people that I really have such gratitude towards them, because yes, they're friends of mine, but they didn't have to do what they did, which is to go out of their way and order stuff from me.
And even though it was an odd time, Nava, I want to ask this question because we have many listeners who start as hobbyists and they're just baking. Did you start a bit? Did you actually get a business checking account? Did you like begin to think of this as a real business at this time?
So in the beginning, what I did, so my husband actually has an MBA and I don't. So I said to him, I was like, what do I do? Like, what am I doing right now? And he, I think wisely, because nobody can predict the future, he said, let's not do anything yet. He said, let's see how it goes.
Right.
And then when we see that this isn't going anywhere but forward, then we will get your LLC, we'll get your insurance, we'll cross the T's and dot the I's. And he was right, because I think there are a lot of things that could have happened that would have prevented me from doing going forward with it. One would have been maybe, I don't know, that I missed playing piano so much that I wouldn't have wanted to go further than just, keep the hobby going.
Right.
It could be that I would have tried, but that I couldn't gain traction or momentum. And so I gave up. Like, who knows what would have been. Like, any number of things could have prevented me from moving forward. And instead, it was what I never ever would have predicted. I mean, never. And there were a few kind of things that sort of got me. So first, it was family and friends, and a few friends that really just used any excuse to order something from me, which was really, really nice. And in the beginning, actually, I had a website and it had like cookies, it had bread on it, cinnamon rolls, babka. It had like a lot of different things on it. But very, very quickly, I saw that most of my orders were cake and cupcakes with requests for these flowers. And I had to break it to I had a few steady customers who ordered kind of lots of things. And I had to tell them, I'm actually taking everything off the website except cake and cupcakes, because it's like too difficult to, when you're like trying to get a rhythm in the kitchen and you're using a yeasted dough, and then you're not using a yeasted dough for that. So you're proofing over here, you're not proofing over there. Something has to be refrigerated for this amount of time. Like, it was too much going on and I was doing everything alone. So I decided, you know what, I got to streamline if this is going to really work, and make it like very narrow. And by the way, before I even got off the ground, I had already did some focus groups where I'd make like 5 different chocolate cakes, label them 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Take these pieces, wrap them, and kind of disperse them among family, friends, and just be like, please, like, give me your ratings so that I can see what lands on top. Because that top place, that winner, is going to be what I use, like, period. And every so often I kind of go back to the drawing board just to make sure that I'm giving whoever's ordering from me the best possible version of a vanilla layer cake or the best possible version of carrot cake, so that I feel comfortable saying, like, this cake tastes really, really good. And I've really explored every option for what chocolate cake is or vanilla cake is or whatever.
I love that. And I think sometimes when we start out too, we want to be all things to all people. And the fact that you actually pulled it back is huge. And it's also looking at where you're, as I always say, where's your bread and butter, or where's your frosting happening? Like, where do you want to put your efforts? Because if it is just you and you're spread so thin, then you do burn out. And
that's right.
And instead you really brought it all in and focused on the thing that you were not only loved creatively, but you were doing oh so well.
Well, this is also interesting that I think one of the reasons that I didn't think it would really go anywhere is because, so I live in New York City, the city where you can get anything you want at any time of day on any street corner, right?
Right.
Wrong. Yeah. It turns out that although there are so many wonderful bakeries in this city, not a lot of people do what I do, it turns out, on a storefront level. Like, there are a handful of bakers that I found on Instagram in this area that do something similar to what I do. Of course, it's not exactly the same, but when I have to turn away a customer because I'm fully booked, I do have a few people that I can say, look, try this person. It's the closest to what I do visually. On the other hand, if we were all the way over in the UK, I could recommend 20 other people who
they
would
do have a lot over there. Yeah.
They are cupcake bouquet central over there. It's massive, massive cottage industry. And here it's just so odd to me that I consider my hometown to be one of the centers of the universe.
Yeah.
And yet people can't seem to get what they want on Columbus Avenue.
Interesting.
So I have two questions. One is, are you still doing everything yourself and do you have help? And also, are you mostly focused local or do you also ship product?
So I don't ship anything. I think at one point I was like, oh, it would be great if I could ship. But the truth is, once I eliminated the things that weren't fragile, like the babka and the cinnamon rolls, those things ship very easily.
Right.
But the flowers, all of the flowers that I make are made from American buttercream, which is basically butter and powdered sugar, which means that like under 72 degrees is great. But the minute it goes above 72 degrees, it starts melting. So that means for shipping, dry ice. It means also protecting so that nothing moves. My business isn't big enough to kind of enable me to then also do all of that. Yeah. And to answer your other question, I do have a baking assistant who helps me just with cake layers and cupcake. She doesn't do any decorating, but she is a huge help and a time saver and a lifesaver. Because if I was doing every single thing by myself, I wouldn't be able to take the volume of orders. I still don't even take the volume of orders. I have more volume coming in than I can put out. So I do feel like it is important, just coming back to this, it is important for me to have people that I can point to and say, I can't do that. That week is gone, but you can go to this person or this person and you'll get something similar.
On an average week, how many cakes are you making, or cakes and cupcakes on average?
Yeah. So I try really, really hard not to go above 7 cakes a week, or rather it's really more like 7 orders a week, so that every day I have the one order. The problem with that is that some of the orders are really big. So as an example, I might have one order for a week if it's a wedding, so that I'm just focusing on the 250 people that are going to be eating the cake at the end of that week. But if it's a week where it's all birthdays, nothing huge, no big bridal showers or engagement parties, then I can up it because I have more space and I can do that if I get, but again, like I've had orders where I've done, 7 dozen cupcakes. And if I'm doing that, I can't take that much in addition to that. Just
right.
There's only so much space on the counter.
Right.
And you're still doing it out of your home. So
yes.
Your cottage industry. Yeah. And but it's incredible the way that it's grown. And so you're consistent in everything. Every week.
So tracking back a little bit to what you mentioned earlier. So the way that happened was, I really think, sort of a phenomena of social media, and also of the fact that I do live in a city and not a rural area. So it's like, there's just such easy access. And I'm also a person, like, I belong to a lot of different communities. Like I have my mom, all the people that my kids grew up with, all their parents, like I'm still in touch with a lot of those people. I'm still a member of my synagogue. I'm a member of, I have, believe it or not, a group fitness community that I've been working out with for years. So I have those people. I have lots of different groups of friends. Yeah. And I think because of that, once it's like a fire that spreads very quickly, someone will be at a party and they'll say, oh, where did you get that cake? And then the next thing I know, I'm getting an email from 3 other people who are at that same party saying, can I get a cake just like the one I ate last night at so-and-so's house or whatever. what happened, but before that could happen, I think that social media really helped. And there were a couple of things. So one was that on the year anniversary of COVID, Reuters reached out to me. I don't know how they found me, but they reached out to me. I mean, they found me on Instagram, and they just said, we're doing a piece on people who started a business because of COVID and like what they're doing a year later. So the Reuters piece got sort of spread out. You know how it works. Like all these different publications can buy it and then print it. The Jewish Telegraphic Agency has a similar setup. And there was a woman who does food reporting who I knew through my kids' school. She reached out to me and she was like, can I interview you about the fact that you're doing this now? Yes. Time Out New York was like out of the blue, reached out to me. Can we do a blurb on you? And once those things happen, and they put it on their Instagram, in addition to the fact that it's published like I want to say in print, but it's like whatever, digital. That's a lot of people reading your name in this context with the photos. Right. They always were accompanied by photos of the cakes. And so there's like sort of it was a steady stream of publicity that I wasn't even like, it was funny. Someone said to me, do you have a publicist? How are you getting all this? I'm like, I didn't look for it. They found me on Instagram. Yeah. I don't know what the algorithm on these people's phones are, but it must have popped up because this is what's happened. And then every once in a while, like there's a high profile person who will post or follow or whatever, or
interview you, such as Miss Katie Couric, who did a gorgeous interview about you. But that's huge. I mean, when they have now. So here's a question about the collaboration of the cake. So I am a floral person. Obviously, I take photos of lots of flowers. I have actually since about 2015. But if we were going to work on a cake together, how does the process usually go?
Right. So a lot of my wedding couples will, and I've had it even for bridal shower and engagement parties and stuff like this, even big birthday parties, like a big 50th or a big 60th or whatever, people will send me photos of the flower arrangements that they've gotten from their florists, or some people are super organized and they have like it's almost like a storyboard for their wedding or their event. And it'll have color swatches and pictures of the flowers and pictures of the tablescape in general, like what they think they're going to end up with. And then they'll just say to me, like, this is the vibe we're going for. What do you think? And I can sort of chime in and out. I mean, the truth is, and I'm sure you being so plugged into flowers, there's not really any such thing as like an ugly flower.
No.
It doesn't exist. The one thing that has happened every once in a while, and this is like where I feel like I need to learn. I learn from my customers. Sometimes I'll get a request and someone will say, for some reason, they want some color combination that I'm like afraid of. Like a good example is blue. So It's very hard to find a blue flower that's really blue. Like they usually tend toward purple. There is one type of Icelandic poppy that is actually blue. But even so, like every once in a while, I'll be like, okay, I got to put my thinking cap on here because I can't have this look tacky and like a Disney cartoon or something. So once in a while, I will get something like that. But what I've learned is that if I'm willing to be a little more open-minded and a little more accepting of my brief, it usually turns out totally fine. So I have a repeat customer, and last year, her birthday order, she wanted everything aqua, teal, sea foam, like all of these colors that don't, like if you walked into a flower shop,
right,
we're not going to find those. We're just not. But I was like, okay, you know what? It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to worry about nature right now. I'm going to do this as an art project and I'm going to make it beautiful. And you know what? it didn't look like anything that exists in nature, but it did look great.
Yeah.
Like it
I'm sure
actually,
it
like, so
did.
I just have to be sometimes I have to be a little more accepting. I wish I had known that in the very beginning. I did do one Baltimore Ravens themed color scheme on a cake, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I do feel still very much a bit of regret about the way that one turned out. But I
It's all
redeemed
learning.
But
myself.
it's all
It's
Yes,
all
since
learning.
And, I think sometimes, and you're right, there are very few blues out there, and I take great inspiration by, oh God, there's some beautiful florists out there who put combinations together. And I think like Tulipina, if you follow Tulipina, oh
Mhm.
my God, the stuff she puts together, I'm like, how did you, like the combinations that she puts together are just absolutely unreal. But yeah, that's the tricky part of it too, because it's sort of your taste, but also you have to deal with the client and whatever the client wants.
yes,
Yeah.
So are you still playing? And if you're not, do you miss it at all?
Yeah, that's a great
So
question.
I'm really not playing. I'm really not. Once in a while, someone will say to me, like, I'll have a friend say to me, would you ever consider, I'm going to do such and such and such, and we'd love to have you perform. And I feel very committed and invested in this new chapter. And it's sort of, to me, I kind of feel like it's a funny thing. I think, and I really believe this is sort of true for myself, but I'm sure for other people may be able to relate. So I think that one of the reasons that I don't miss it so much is because there was something waiting for me just sitting in my lap almost
Yeah.
instantly. The minute like I wasn't playing concerts, all of a sudden I was playing another kind of concert, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's still an audience, that I have to present something to. And I think that was very familiar to me and was keeping that piece of me that wants to make people happy. I guess I'm a bit of a people pleaser. And so that was sort of fulfilling that. Okay, check that box, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing about the the cake stuff that I do is that it's also can be expressive and interpretive, and improvisational in a way. And I think that ticked off that other box, that I was used to having. But I do think that like being spread thin is not appealing to me. And if I tried to do everything, something would suffer. But the truth is that I'm just enjoying this so much that it didn't really occur to me to go back or to stop the train from just, going down the track.
I love it. So I have a question. When you're in music, you would get applause instantly. And you posted the other day about you made a beautiful heart cake and you went to someone's birthday. And it was, first of all, a stunning cake. It was absolutely
Thank you.
gorgeous. But what are the gifts or what are the applause that are happening now that are filling you up? Because it's different. You would get instant gratification and now it's a little different. And you talked about that. And I thought that was really interesting.
It is, it's different, but it's similar. So like one of the things that I love is I do get with a lot of my customers, not everybody, but a lot of them, I will get an email or a text or a direct message after the fact, and sometimes a little photo with a picture of the cake actually, cut.
Yeah.
Saying, I just want you to know it made my birthday so special, or my grandma's birthday so special, whatever it was. And in the case of the wedding couples, I almost always get sort of a very, very immediate response because they're always, I don't know, the couples I deal with, they've always been, I guess, super organized. So I'll get like a text or an email like within a couple of days. Oh my gosh, it was amazing. And so that kind of fulfills that, getting the applause and taking the bow in that way is kind of like a different scale, but really, really special.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I'm actually at somebody's event where I've made the cake and brought it to the event. Like the other night, that heart cake was actually for a friend of mine. And I really do love that because I get to see it in real time.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, so in that particular case, she ordered, and a lot of people do this. So she said, I want a heart-shaped cake and I want cherry blossoms. And that's all I'm going to say. And flavors aside, she told me the flavors, but she was like, from a visual perspective, like, just do what you want. But those are the two things I kind of am thinking about. So I said, fine. So she actually didn't see the cake before it came out. Her husband had texted me and was like, can you like put a piece of paper over the window? There's the boxes I use have like a plastic window in the top so you can like see into them. He was like, can you tape something over that? I don't want her to see it. So I said, sure. So like when it came out and I saw her face light up, it was like really sweet.
That's pretty amazing.
There must be something beautiful about bringing something so beautiful to celebrations and, real pivot points in people's lives, and you're celebrating with them.
Yeah, it is. And also, every once in a while you get like a special order. There's this man that messaged me. This was a couple of years ago. And he basically was like, my wife has celiac, and I just want to know if you make gluten-free cakes. And of course I hadn't done any at that point. And I wrote him back and I said, I haven't done any. I said, my kitchen is full of regular flour. I would be very nervous about cross-contamination. I said, but if I clean up and I have enough time to test between now and then, do you want me to get back to you? Because maybe I'll figure it out. And he said, please do. So this was in the beginning and I wasn't like inundated with orders. And I actually had a day here or there to futz around. And I ended up coming up with a couple of options that I thought were good. And I texted him back and I said, I think I can do it. So he said, I'm so grateful. And anyway, I made the cake and he wrote me practically like a letter afterwards, like a long letter about how special it was because it's so hard for her to find something beautiful that tastes good, that isn't, just sort of like generic. And it makes you feel like you did a good deed.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, you're spreading joy and you're giving joy and happiness. And in our world today, I mean, that's why Lori puts out the beautiful colors and art that she does, and why I put out the flowers that I do.
Yeah.
And when I saw your Instagram, I'm like, oh my God, like it's just amazing. And I love the pivot that you took, and especially because you had a very successful career, but I love how you've turned this hobby into a full-on business. And over five years later, what have been some of the best blessings that you've had over the 5 years?
I feel like it's there are a few like highlights, of course, like when I got a message from Katie Couric, that was pretty fun.
That'd be up on my list.
Yeah.
That was really, really sweet and special. But like there have been, I think in general, this feeling that what I do is making someone happy, even if it's for like a very short period of time, that sort of is very fulfilling for me. And also I do love, every once in a while, there's like a fun moment with someone I don't know, where we end up striking up a friendship. And I'm like, I feel like I know this person, even though we've only really communicated via direct message on social media. But I kind of like the new friends I'm making. Like it's so weird, but all of a sudden I feel like I have this community of new friends. And in fact, when I first started out, my first wedding cake order that came in, I was so nervous. And let me just give you a little bit of background. I did make a wedding cake many, many years ago before I had a business doing this. Our then babysitter was getting married and she's not from the States and she had no family here. And she said she was just going to get married at the courthouse, no party. And I said, wait, I'm going to make you a wedding cake and I'm going to make you a party at our apartment. And she was like, what? And she knew I baked because she knew I would do that in my downtime. But she was like, Nava, no offense, but you don't know how to make a wedding cake. And I said, I know I don't. I'm going to learn. And at that time, there was no iPhone. There was no Instagram. It was like YouTube and a big wedding book by Martha Stewart that had all these instructions in it. I still have the book. It's like this big book and it has recipes, measurements, like all the science for constructing the cake, the dowels, the boards, how many cups of batter per, like what inch pan you're using for this recipe. I did the whole thing through that book. And I still have some photos of it and it looked really not great. it looked okay. It didn't look great, but it was the thought that counted.
But you tried.
Anyway, I tried and it tasted good. Jump ahead now to beginning of 2021. And a friend of my sister-in-law's reaches out to me and she says, I know we've only met a couple times through your brother and sister-in-law, but she showed me some photos of your cakes and I want you to make my daughter's wedding cake. And I was beyond terrified.
Yeah.
I was terrified. But one thing that came out of that, first of all, I'm grateful to that woman. I'm actually about to make another one of her kids' wedding cakes, for
nice.
June. One of her other daughters is getting married. But I'm very thankful for her because she had faith in me without any real reason to have faith in me.
Yeah.
But the other thing is I became part of a wedding cake Facebook group, like people who make wedding cakes. And I have like a whole community there that I feel so like grateful for. And whenever there's anything, people, they put a question up. Has anyone ever used this brand of flour or this brand of like, why is this not working? And someone chiming in, are you using this powdered sugar? Because if you're not, you should be, or, you can find a lot of comfort in these communities. And I feel like that's been a huge highlight for me is like finding people that I never thought in my 50s, all of a sudden I have like all these new friends that I can be geeky and talk crazy cake details with. And it's just been so great.
Oh, I love that.
I love that.
Absolutely love that.
And I agree. I mean, I have all my little floral friends. I have friends in England that I've met. I have friends all over and I love when you meet people and I think because of COVID too, we all felt so isolated that sometimes social media has provided those beautiful connections. Lori and I we met through something else, but I mean, I would have been friends.
But that came about because of social media.
Is that right?
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we are friends in person, doing things together, doing this podcast. I mean, you never know the path you're going to take, where it's going to lead. But I do credit a lot of what my success and what I've done. And it's lovely to hear you reiterate that too in social media, because it's just made a huge world. It's opened so many doors that you never thought could be open.
And you mentioned how important community is to building a business.
Yeah.
I mean, you're building it through social media, but you're also building it through being involved and meeting people. And, that is so powerful.
The irony, this is the funny part, is that all of our children have now sworn off social media. Like they're not on it anymore because they're like, Mom, it's not healthy. We get you have to do it for your business, but we're not doing it.
Well,
and I find it really funny and cute. And they do occasionally, they'll pop on. Why? To show a friend my business.
Yeah.
Like it's adorable. And I really appreciate it. All of a sudden I'll have all these college students, these like new followers. I'm like, who are all these new followers? Oh, I see in their bio, they're all college students from my son's school or whatever, my daughter's school. I'm like, they're all their friends. But
it's fun.
It is really funny
among the 20-year-olds. I always say, I'm like, okay, I can be cool mom in my 50s. And, even though I'm a grandma and, it's like, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Nava, what advice has been given to you maybe in this new chapter of your life, or maybe even in your past chapter that you sort of hold on to that guides you, or that maybe you even give to others?
Right. Well, it's funny. I'm going to name drop just for a second.
That's okay.
One of my early like cheerleaders, who I was just like sort of astounded, kind of just mind boggled that she found me. But one of I would call her a baking queen, but also a cooking queen and a cookbook queen. But Dory Greenspan, who I don't know if you know that name.
I have her cookbook. Yes. Oh,
she has a bunch of them.
Yes,
yeah. So she has a lot of books out there, and she became very much a little bit of a mentor to me in early days. And actually she found me on social media. She found me on Instagram, but she said to me in the very beginning, like, what do you do? Like, what's going on? What are you doing? Like, she kind of remembered me from when I was a musician, and she was like, what's going on? Like, what's happening here? And I kind of explained, and she said to me, when you're doing, like, she said something, and I don't even know if she would remember telling me this, because often people don't remember when they've given wise advice, and you spit it back at them and they're like, did I say that?
Yeah.
But she did say to me, you're in a second career. And I think for a second career, you should do what you want to do, not what other people are telling you to do. And the way that it had come up is that I had a few people approach me, and they were like, do you need an angel investor for a brick and mortar store? We'd put money in it. Like, if you want, if you need money, or do whatever we can to support you. And I remember thinking to myself, well, first of all, I was really flattered, but then I was like, do I want a bakery? Do I want to own a real bakery on the street where people can just come in? And I was really, really, I just was very apprehensive. And when I brought it up to her, she said, you're apprehensive probably because you don't want that.
Right.
And if you do want it, eventually it'll play out and you'll realize you do. But if you don't want it right now, this is your second chance of doing something that you want to do. And it's about you and what you feel like doing. So if making one cake a month is what you want to do,
then bake one cake a month. Yeah.
That is the best advice.
That's the best advice. Because I always say, what's the view at the top of the mountain? And people are always like, you should open a pretty store. And I'm like, okay, who's managing the pretty store? Who's paying the rent? Who's gonna do all of that? Do you realize what a pretty store involves? And they want it because it's their convenience, but it's not necessarily your convenience.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
And that's right.
If you have the flexibility to create what you're doing within the parameters that you're doing, then that's perfect. That's perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that I had brought up to myself, but after Dory had said that to me, was, I don't think that if one of the reasons I think that my cakes have been like, what has happened is because they look a certain way. And in order for me to train, so I'd have to try and train other people if I'm going to scale up. Who's doing all that decorate? Like, I can't stay up all night. I do need to sleep at some point.
Exactly.
And you can't it's like handwriting. It's not going to look the same.
Right.
Like, it's very personal. And I found that out when I was learning from these tutorials. I was like, oh, I'm going to make these look like Jane's. And I'm looking at Jane, and Jane is piping, and I'm piping, and I'm using the exact same equipment, the exact same frosting recipe, the exact same everything. Does my flour look like that? No, because it's like it's a personal hand thing.
And you're painting with frosting.
You are.
Every artist's work looks different.
And it's a very it's a very unique thing. There was a lady on the Today Show today, but she was making scones in New York City. And she goes, I'm the only one that touches the dough. No one else. And I'm like, and they're like, nobody else helps you. She goes, nope, it's my recipe. Like, you could tell she was, and she has a brick and mortar. I'm like, God bless you. She looked a little tired, I'm going to say, but
now I'm curious, who was that?
I'll have to look that up and let you know. But I get it. And I get that even for my florals and things like that. And Lori's an artist. I mean, you can it's still got to be your art, you touching it. And
and I love when I teach that everybody's work at the end of the class looks so different. Well, I encourage that too, but that's one of the great joys, is seeing people's personality, their hand, their voice coming through their work.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, Nava, you have been such a delight, such a treat for us and for our listeners. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
And I selfishly asked about shipping because I just want to taste one of your cakes.
Well, and we should ask just at the final, and we will put this in our things too. What is the general order ahead if they were in New York City? How far ahead are you ordering now?
So it's a real problem. I feel so guilty. I have to say no to people every day, but right now I don't really have any time until the end of June. Okay. And there are still a few dates in late June that are open, but we're getting toward July now. So it's actually quite common for spring to be
a little busy.
It books farther ahead because it's usually weddings, graduations, and that stuff. So people want to guarantee it, so they'll get to me very, very far in advance.
Yeah. My birthday's in August. Anyone? My daughter who lives in New York City. Just so you know, sweetheart.
You can bring it on the plane. People.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nava.
Thank you, and to our listeners, peace, love, and ReBloom. Life is too short not to follow your passions, so go out there and let your heart plant you where you are meant to be and grow your joy.
We will be right here sharing more incredible stories of reinvention with you. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode of ReBloom.
Until next time, I'm Jamie Jameson.
And I'm Lori Siebert.
Peace, love, and ReBloom, dear friends.